Okay, everyone, well, thanks for joining us. John Capobianco here, head of AI in DevRel, and I'm joined by my good buddy and real brilliant AI engineer, Joksan Flores, who's our principal solutions engineer. And today we're going to be talking about from CVE to coverage, from those critical vulnerabilities to coverage against those vulnerabilities, and automating vulnerability impact analysis with flow agents. I really take this seriously because in my previous life, in both environments, in the financial sector and in the public sector, CVEs they could lead to emergency meetings, emergency cab approvals, emergency change windows, plugging those holes. It would be impossible to say I've never been affected by one in my 15 years. Infrastructure that you run is affected by these, and more of them are popping up because AI is being used against these platforms to dig out these vulnerabilities. So there seems to be an explosion in vulnerabilities right now, eh, Joksan?
Yeah, hey John, good to be here with you. And yes, same for me. I did heavy years of consulting, starting my career. I always call it, that was my hazing phase, where they made me do a lot of the reporting and all this stuff had to be done manually. And for those of you, a lot of people I think can relate to this. We're going to look at some Cisco CVEs today, but as an industry as a whole, imagine managing a multi-vendor environment and you have to walk through every single website that a vendor gives you with the CVEs, their details, what commands are affected, what features, what software versions, and going on auditing the environment is something it's a lot of work. Even us providing services, we had a lot of false positives. We had tooling to do it, but we still had a lot of false positives. So we had to go and do manual scans, go and do show commands on the devices and making sure that it matched this condition and also the software version and all that stuff. And even as we've gone through a couple iterations of these. This is not the first demo or webinar that we do on this topic. But until this point where we can leverage reasoning and AI, there hasn't really been a good way of taking the data that we have and putting it in a format that the machine can use in order to automate this process, right? It's typically been, I'm going to check some show commands, and then we're going to have to take that information and do something with it. Or I have to create a custom workflow or a custom piece of code for every CVE that comes out, which is not scalable. And that's hopefully what we're trying to address today, is how do we merge the world of AI and the power of reasoning through the web pages that our gracious OEMs provide us with all the detailed information and put it into something that the machine can understand and can audit the environment for, which is what I used to do by hand. I've spent a lot of time staring at spreadsheets.
Oh, how many boxes? I remember the discussion. How many of our systems have log4j on them, John?
Isn't that crazy?
Whoa, geez, I don't know. Almost everything. How many things that come up, and you do need to be able to react to them. So I'm really excited. Before we get to demos, there's just a couple slides I'm going to show to kind of set the stage onto where and what components of Itential are being used today. I did a session, and the webinar is on demand. You can go watch it, about model context protocol. Today is about other tools. There's other tools available in our platform. I think I've really done a good job of covering MCP. So let's look at a different approach and a different way of using the Itential platform today. So if anyone's new to Itential, we're throwing around terms like gateways and platforms and engines and AI and flow AI. I like to look at it as kind of like a 4-layer stack. And inside of that 4-layer stack, we have very delineated kind of roles, right? So at the very top, you may not see it, people, but if you focus at the top, we've got the pink boxes of people, pipelines, and agents. Now that's consuming this platform from a Northbound perspective. And you can consume it through traditional REST APIs, which we have, very rich library of, and as well as our Itential MCP server. The other thing I would mention is also our builder skills through the Anthropic published skill that we have, that you could plug Claude code in, like an agent or a person, it's a mix of the two, and use our builder skills to build in and operate anything inside of the platform from a CLI. Joksan, maybe do you want to highlight which buttons and which boxes we're going to be kind of seeing in action today?
Yeah, so definitely from the top down, John, like you said, right? Very focused on a self-service exposed use case. So we're going to be doing things, launching things from the people side of things today, We're going to be using a form, little form input in our operations manager. We're mainly going to be interacting with agents, but the agents are actually focused on using various pieces of the platform, right? Obviously, we're launching agent execution, so we're going to see some agent sessions. We're going to use our Work Center application, which is our human in the loop interface, where humans can come and interact with the machine, view, approve tasks, and so on and so forth, right? View data, reporting, and things like that. Mainly, we're using it for reporting today. And then in the background, we're actually using our Lifecycle Manager that will keep state of our CVE correlation to the impacted devices, the show commands that we're going to be executing on devices, the things that we're looking for on the devices when we're looking at, for example, doing things like show, make IPSLA, CVE, right? If we're looking at show IPSLA, that Lifecycle Manager will keep state, right? We'll keep track of the command and what we're looking for on the output to make sure that the device is either vulnerable or not, as well as things like versions, software versions that are impacted, and so on. And then also down at the bottom, talking about tooling, John, kind of, tacking on a little bit on what you were saying, right? One of the things that we do, and this is very much on purpose, right? And essentially, if you look at the gateway at the bottom there, the gateway acts as the execution engine, like you said. The gateway could be on your Mac when you do development. And if it's in your production network, it'll sit in your data center somewhere, right? That's kind of a remote satellite execution engine. That gateway, we're using it today to actually execute API calls straight into the NVD API, the Circle API for correlation of both, piece of things and so on. And then we're also going to be executing CLI commands straight to the devices. So that gateway acts as that engine. Now, one thing that, kind of to piggyback off of the MCP discussion, in Itential, we normalize the tooling, right? So any tool, whether it is an API call that is not an MCP, right, that we onboard through our integration framework, or it is a tool to send CLI to devices, or it's an MCP, John, like the ones that you did on the previous webinar, they all show up the same. They all get added to agents as tools. So we provide an abstraction. So we have a harness, right, in the platform, truly, right? We have a governed harness with an UI and with a platform surrounding it on top that lets me build those agents and kind of not worry too much about the mechanics of the tool, right? If I use the NVD PCert or the API, which is what I'm doing today, the agent actually behaves the same. And I've done this, right? I've done this similar use case agent with the NVD, with the NVD MCP. In this case, I'm just happen to use the API, but it doesn't change the result.
Right. So, geez, there's two things that I really want to, and I'll work backwards because of the way my mind works. The gateway itself, what I think is great is that the security-minded folks in this team, the compliance folks on this team, people are on the maybe on the artificial intelligence, board or internal Tiger team. That's a central point, right? So that means we can put RBAC and AAA and governance, and we don't have agent sprawl. We don't have tool sprawl. We don't have everyone's own version of their MCP or their whatever. And I also proved last week or when we did the webinar about MCPs that you can bring your own. We encourage DIY. I think some people maybe misunderstand Itential. We are here to empower your DIY. So when you write that fast MCP server for your internal system, you can host that on the gateway and promote those tools in a normalized fashion upstream into the platform within 2 or 3 actions. Git clone, pip install requirements text, boom. Now those tools are available to the platform. The other thing is everyone's talking about memory. Agents are amazing, but one big outstanding or one big sort of asterisk around agentic everything is their memory capability. And you mentioned that state in the lifecycle state and how we're storing the results of those show commands to augment those agents with truly stateful memory, right?
Yeah, and also the other side of it is done by using the Lifecycle Manager. In this case, I actually used it in a dual purpose. One of them was to provide the interaction because we're actually using 2 agents for this demonstration. One agent that does the CVE parsing, right? It reads the CVE. And there's a totally different agent that doesn't have anything to do with the first one that will evaluate the results of the scan and do reporting and provide recommendations. And these 2 agents are bridged via that Lifecycle Manager. But then also, John, the other thing that we don't talk about as much And, I'm not afraid, right? We're not afraid to talk about it nowadays. It used to be context bloat, right? We used to blow through context windows like crazy, and they became large enough, so it wasn't a big deal. But whenever you're scanning 100 to 500,000 devices, try to do that, right? Try to store a bunch of show commands from 1,000 devices and see how that goes, right? And not even mentioning cost. So what we've done here with this demonstration is we let our workflow process the data and do the scan and return a very slim set of data back to the agent saying, hey, these devices are confirmed impacted based on the features you told me. Go and report on it. And this is how it goes. So that way we can use the agent for the reasoning part, and we let the code or the workflow in this case, or whatever it is in the backend, do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, I don't think we talk about our tokenomics enough and uh, how we are optimizing token utilization with our platform. So this is all a great big build up to, and again, this is 2 agents. Joksan just mentioned it. So we are in the world of not just a singular monolithic agent. We're decomposing those so we can orchestrate agents. Now, this is starting to turn into ants or bumblebees or little offices of cubicles of people that each have their own specialty, their own boundaries, their own guardrails, but they can cooperate, they can collaborate, they can be orchestrated. So we're going to be using LCM, Lifecycle Manager, that carries the data so the agent doesn't have to. Or Joksan just talked about this, the tokenomics of all of this, and the context window being aware of it and cognizant of it. Right, so we're going to have a registration agent that writes the CVE severity platforms and rules to the LCM instance, a deterministic workflow that scans the fleet. Now we haven't even touched an LLM here with this part. So no raw data touches the model. Again, tokenomics and being conscious of context window. And then we're going to have an assessment agent, different agent, read the finished device list and severity back from the LCM and do that wonderful thing that AI is incredible at, reporting and summarization, right? So maybe, Joksan, do you want to maybe go through the 4 bullets here and what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, John, I think one of the things that I personally struggled with while doing this quite a bit initially on was the fact that I had to do a lot of the parsing, right? Or we had a team that did parsing and created these set of rules, right? There was a huge back into the tool. They said, for these software versions, this is the show command, and this is the regex that you expect out of it for a vulnerable, not vulnerable, potentially vulnerable device. And these are the software versions, and there's an and logic between it and all that stuff, right? In this case, we have a generic model in LCM that stores that data. We're letting the agent grab that data, right? We're letting the agent go pull from NVD, from Circle. It could be the PCERT API, which is sometimes a little richer. It could be the Juniper API, the Nokia, whatever, right? This is meant to be multi-vendor. And it pulls that data and it puts it in the model. All that we required from the model is, hey, give me the software versions that are impacted. Give me a summary of the PCERT, right? Because I need to share the CVE, because I need to share it for reporting later. I need to know what it does. And then give me the show commands that I need to check with the little regex. That gets registered into Lifecycle Manager as an object on a per instance basis. So I can create, lots and lots and lots of CVEs. They can stay there. You can decommission it after the fact whenever they become non-relevant. And then we have a second agent that reads that. And essentially what that agent will do is it'll say, I'm going to read the data that comes out of there. In the middle, Lifecycle Manager has workflows that read that data and they know what to do with it. Essentially what they do is they look through the CVE. I will give them an inventory. So I have an inventory in our lab that has a bunch of devices, like 40 devices or so. It'll look through, it'll correlate, the workflow will correlate which operating system this CVE is relevant for. It could be one or many operating systems. And then it'll walk through the list of show commands, find the appropriate devices, execute the show command, apply the regex to it, report them back, and then we'll use an agent to read that information, report on it, and put it in a useful format for humans. One thing that I haven't spoken about and that we could do, John, is of course, right? You've done all the extra tooling, right? We could, after the fact, when we're done identifying which devices are impacted, we could open a ticket with them, right? We can open an incident or just a change request, or we could send an email, or we could, tell Johnny at the knock that he needs to worry about patching these devices over the weekend. I don't know, something like that. Or we could dispatch the agent later to perform the remediation.
Yep, that's awesome. Prepare a report for the auditors. Prepare a post mortem.
Yep.
rerun this same agent after you've remediated and do the delta. How many are still outstanding? Did I get everything patched, right? Am I in my window? Am I secure again? Okay, so this is the exciting part. We're going to hand it over to Joksan to share his screen, and we're actually going to perform this live. We're going to do this with the real agent, the real flow, and right, none of this is staged. We're doing it for your purposes here. So I wish we were all on that beach someday. We'll get there, but yeah,
It looks like Fiji or something.
yeah, that's wonderful.
Okay, let's go through this. So today, like John said, right, there's a lot of stuff that we could do after the fact with it. Also, the triggers, keep in mind that the way that I'm triggering this is not necessarily the way that this has to be done, right? This could be triggered via API, via some sort of sword tool that's triggered off of CVEs, right? A lot of possibilities there. And also the scans could be done in a scheduled basis or anything like that, right? So these are obviously for demonstration purposes, but there's a lot of things that we could do. So feel free to ask questions and reach out and, any questions that you may have about it. Like I explained to John early on, we have 2 agents inside of this project, right? And I called it CVE Impact Assessment Multi-Agent. And we have 2 components, and this could be, one too many. Like I said, right, the amount of agents in here is just the amount of, we decided to solve this particular use case. In this case, we're going to use the CVE vulnerability registration agent first. And like I said, right, and this will say it right here in the description. This agent will register a CVE in Lifecycle Manager with the CVE details. And very briefly walking through the prompt, if you look at, we have a handful of tools below that will show, but essentially what the job of this agent will be is we'll pass it a CVE, right? It only has one input, a CVE ID. That's it. That's all we need to give it. It'll call NVD and circle. And essentially the data that comes from NVD and circle, very much some of it's duplicate. It's very useful to kind of correlate. Sometimes NVD is a little behind on its updates. So this becomes a very dynamic process where we have more than one tool providing data. From there on, we map the field to Lifecycle Manager for data. There are some instructions in here that say these are the things that you need to do mandatory, right? Like software versions impacted. We want that populated. We want impacted devices is always empty whenever we start because we haven't done an assessment yet. And then show command rules, which is very important. So we're going to build a list of show commands. Like, for example, right, we have some examples we provide to the agent. If you're looking at IKV2, show crypto IKV2 SA is a very common command to figure out if IKV2 is enabled in iOS, right? This is a multi-vendor process, but some examples in here. And then also we build some regex, right? We want the agent to create a regex pattern to identify the devices that are vulnerable. A lot of this stuff also, John, another one of those things that we don't talk about as often is customers can actually augment this agent by providing knowledge bases. Like they could do, you've done some experiments with bookshelves, right? You could provide bookshelves of PDFs from the vendors or anything like that, right? I don't know if they use it anymore, but vendors used to publish the guides for security hardening or whatever for the devices, and they used to have show commands and things like that. So all those could be passed in as context via some MCP or via knowledge base injection in the platform.
But I think anyone watching would agree that this is not a 400, 800, 1200 line Python script, right?
No.
And you don't have to worry about your secrets and the API call and how to get the REST data. And like you've literally written it in human language with a network engineer's expertise, system engineer's expertise. Obviously, it's an augmentation. And, I don't know that I would expect a junior to be able to write this. Maybe they could, but I love, and there's the tools that have been selected, right? So you can actually see the tools and we can even see the sources of these tools.
Yep. And junior can't build it, John, but junior can run it.
Can run it. Exactly.
And junior doesn't have to log into, I don't know how many devices we have in this inventory, but doesn't have to log into 40 devices, for example.
No, and it's I always, anytime I get a chance to repeat this joke from the old altnet days, a person has a problem and they're going to use regex to solve it. Now that person has 2 problems, right? And I'm glad it's been abstracted away into a simple snippet inside of an agent instruction.
Yeah.
So okay, so this is where when we talk about agents, right, I always want to remind people we're specifically talking about React agents, the reasoning, and we've covered the reasoning quite a bit today. This is the acting. And with acting, you can bind tools or CLIs or API calls or MCPs are extremely popular, of course. This is the action part. So we've given it the reasoning and its guardrails and instructions. And now we're saying, here's the tools that you can use to reach beyond your own capability.
Yep. 100%, John. I got, back on your joke about regex. I got quite good at doing regex, and I'm not sure I'm very proud of it anymore. But what's the tools? Yeah, exactly. And I'm very stingy when it comes to tool selection, John. So I only gave the agent 5 tools, right? It lets me keep my context very tight and my execution very tiny and very right, because I don't want my agent to wander.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if I need to give it more tools, I will. But I typically try to, hey, the minimal list of things that you need in order to accomplish your job. So in this case, it has some Lifecycle Manager tools, right? One to get what it registers, the other one to register things, and these are custom actions that I build. And they can be followed up. This one seems, it's an empty action, but I could put a workflow behind some of these tools. So I can do a lot of very creative things and very creative patterns. We also have the NVD tool, search by CVE from NVD. The circle get vulnerability details. These are straight API calls that I just provided to the agent. No wrapping around, no workflows, like you said, John. Obfuscation of all the mechanics of the tool, right? The platform's taking care of the authentication, the RBAC, right? It so happens that I have RBAC access to these, but if I didn't have permission, I couldn't even see them to give them to the agent.
Right.
And then I have,
and you know what? And in terms of us talking about the pre and post stuff, it's just adding another tool. Like it would take you 5 seconds to add a Slack tool or an email tool, and then adjust your prompt to say and use the Slack tool and send the message to the channel or whatever. Right.
Correct. Yeah. Which we do quite a bit, right? We do quite a bit to kind of demo our agents. So we have our tool selection, profile, and model, right? And I think you demonstrated this before. And then permissions. I always provide my team, and this is who has access to run that agent, right?
Yeah.
So now let's go and actually, John, what do you think of if we run one of these puppies?
I think we should. I think we should run them.
Okay. So let's see. We have 2 agents, and they will be exposed via our operations manager interface. And this is actually due for, this is going to get a little reskinning soon, John. So I'm very excited for that. But essentially now we have what we call a trigger, and this is a trigger of type agent, and this is my agent right here. So I'm going to run now. And you see, the only thing we have to provide, John, to that agent is a CVE. Perfect. So I have CVE that I found here, and I'm going to go and launch our agent. And we can go ahead and discuss as this goes through, and that's its thing. And I'm going to close that one because I don't need it anymore. So let's go ahead, and the agent's now walking through this, and it's blowing through a lot of these things that it's got to do. But you see kind of the prompt, how it goes. It says, hey, call the MVD, which we saw, and circle with the CVE that we provided. Right, so the agent's already doing some sort of the, walking through, taking the values that we provided, and it's doing some of its work. And when you look at, it's going through the reasoning stages and calling all the tools in the platform, right? It did the search by CVE. It's looking inside of the platform to see if the resource model exists, right?
Yep.
Just validate that there's no duplicates. And it's also correlating in the Circle API. And then it says, excellent, I have all the data I need. Now let me fetch the show command reference files to pick the most appropriate verification commands. So I actually have a show command reference attached to this, and I did an inform with GitLab. We'll soon have a knowledge base that we do right instead on top of the platform. And like I said, John, we do some of these with we'll provide bookshelves and so on and so forth.
And it's already done, by the way, everyone. So that took about a minute and a half. It took 2,600 output tokens. And what I want to really show off our UI. You can, if you want to focus on the reasoning, you can toggle and click on the reasoning and only see the reasoning in the chain. Or if you want to see the tool calling, you can click on the tools only at the top there, Joksan, you see there? Yeah, so we can toggle there. And they have little icons. It's very clear what was a tool and what was a reasoning activity. We can see that it called 5 tools at the summary at the top. And it was 55 seconds. 55 seconds, okay? That's faster than it could take a human to look at the CVE and read a page of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe so if you're a good human and you know what you're doing fast, John. That used to take me a lot longer.
Oh, a lot longer than 55 seconds. Okay, so this was the first registration agent, right? So we're going to go back and check on the next step.
Yeah. So what we do is we go really quick and let's go and look at what it built, right? So if you look at, I mean, it actually has the details in the summary here. It says it found all the effective platforms and version ranges and all these kinds of things. But more importantly, and this is what matters here, is the show commands rules registered. So it actually registered a handful of commands. And look at this, John. This is the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful part. I can finally get rid of my regex skills. Maybe I can do Harry Potter style and erase the memories out of my head. I'm such a nerd. But do you see here, it actually built regex for us to verify that the HTTP feature is enabled. Obviously, this is a very, very, very basic example.
Yeah,
I picked the
I get it.
because it's a classic, right? It's your usual suspect. If I had $1, you can't say penny anymore because pennies are not a thing. But if I had $1 every time I see an HTTP cert, I think I could have retired by now.
Yeah, that's right.
So I picked this guy, but you see how it builds it. And then in the back end, what we have is we have this model.
Check it out. Yeah.
It's registering this, but more importantly, it's creating this thing down here. Look at this, John. The summary, the CVE ID, all the software versions impacted.
Look at this.
Record of it. And then we also have the commands and the regex populated. So this is the intelligence that the workflow now, the Lifecycle Manager will trigger a workflow to do the audit. We don't need the agents to execute show commands, right? I mean,
right.
Them. But if we're doing things at high scale, right, sometimes perhaps we'll blow through a lot of tokens. We'll probably pay a lot of money. So let's use the machine for what it's good at. Workflows are not good at parsing p-certs, right? CVEs, because they're typically in paragraphs, right? They're in free form made for human consumption. So we're letting the machine consume it, right? The model consume it, reason through it, put it in a machine format, and then we'll let the agent do the other part.
Yeah.
Let's go into the next, John, which is the scanning itself, right? The scanning can be done manually via LCM. I could trigger it over there, right? These are actions that get built against it.
Yep.
Like assess inventory impact is the main one that will be used. I can also do others, right? I can build any amount of actions in here, right? I could do all their types of scans. I could execute upgrades. I could execute remediation, what have you. In this case, we're actually going to let the agent consume it. And this will be the next guy, which is CVE Impact Assessment Agent. So I'm going to go and hit again and hit run now. And now I got to pass the CVE ID, which lets the agent correlate which CVE we're talking about. And then I'm going to pass it an inventory. So John, this is the other piece that's useful, right? I think I went a little bit insane here, where I think I used almost every component of the platform because I'm actually using the inventory management here. And this is the application that syncs inventory from any source of truth. So imagine if your inventory lives in Netbox, in Nautobot, in SolarWinds, in ServiceNow CMDB, any tool.
Right.
We can stock up inventory, put it in the platform, and I have it now synced in. And I can just tell the agent, hey, this is the inventory you're going to audit. Go ahead. I don't need to pick devices, no need to do drop downs, and no credentials or CSVs, right, John?
Right.
You know plenty of those, right? Loading.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and click that guy now. And that's going to go ahead and do its thing. And this is a very simple agent itself. This one in here, the only thing it does, and this is the whole prompt, right? It has to obtain the CVE resource instance, assess the inventory impact, and then provide a report for the operator.
Brilliant.
Now it went through it, and it's going through it now. Let's see, it's going through, it's looking through it. Let's see, it failed to run action. It did something wrong, but it seems like it's recovering, and it did it again. Yeah, it's doing it over there. Something's happening.
There we go.
This is the beauty of this, John, right? Whenever you use
I know.
It just recovers and it does its thing, right? It figures it out.
I know. You know, I did early demos for AI for another tool and another platform in my time. And sometimes I would leave, they would be like, you can't leave that in the demo. Like it didn't work. And I'd say, but it did work. It just didn't work the first time. Right. So, but this is the beauty of, like, in a previous life, you had to handle every error, every edge case, every what if, if, right? And now the AI goes, oh, yeah, maybe I set the parameter wrong the first time, then let me adjust my JSON payload or something, right? Who even cares, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, ideally, I don't prefer that it does that, but if it recovers, yeah that's great. So now I can just focus on, hey, my workflows and my actions and my tooling can focus on the logic instead of every exception that it needs.
That's right. That's right. So there we go. It tool call succeeded.
Yep, it succeeded.
And I love that we can show the payload, right? So for audit capabilities, audit purposes, if you ever need to dig deep into the guts of these things, it's all in this audit trail. exactly the reasoning and exactly the tool calling, input and output, right?
And this is the output that we care about, John, which is the impacted devices, right? So it actually
Right.
found that we have some impacted devices that
Yeah.
have these two enabled, right? So if you look at this is the rich detail that we were looking for. It's like show
Yeah.
HTTP server status, HTTP server status enabled, and it found some stuff. So now we're gonna do some reporting. The agent's doing its thing, right? Building, and we'll build some. I tried to build pretty reports. Hopefully, our marketing team will be happy, John. You'll see what comes out next. So this is our Work Center application. So if you look at, I clicked on complete in Work Center.
Yeah.
And Work Center is a human in the loop, right? This is our operator interface where people can just sit down here and kind of take action on things. So let's go ahead and do display. And look at that, John. We have the Itential theme.
That is beautiful. Look at this. Yeah. And look at this report. I mean, if you really wanted to do something like this that you were going to present in a room full of security engineers, this would take you, a couple hours on top of the work that you did finding the vulnerabilities just to make the report, right?
Yep. And this is
Look at
already right.
this. Wow.
The agent has guidance on how to create the report, but there's no hard-coded templating, right? There's no brittleness when it comes to, Jinja temp. I mean, you Jinja.
I was about to say Jinjas, Regex and Jinja, those two things. If we can retire those, we've done our job as engineers.
Yes.
But to your point, we've made this Itentials theme. If this was company X and they wanted red and
Branded,
green, whatever they want, right?
I do it for my customers sometimes to wow them, right? I'll take the branding colors out of their website and I'll put it in, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. So when we bundle
and this again, look at elapsed time, 2 minutes 33 seconds, and it assessed.
Yeah,
and it assessed the whole lab of devices, and we actually found positives with high risk.
Yep,
and it shows you the recommended, even the remediation steps.
Yeah, so it has the recommended action. And John, important, right? 2 minutes, 33 seconds. And that's counting the execution of the tooling, which doesn't even count for tokens because we're abstracting all that because we're executing a workflow, right?
Right.
Yeah, Lifecycle Manager. And yeah, it's got the recommended action. So disable HTTP server. And this all comes from the advisory, right? I want to, stress this, right? The quality of the advisory data. So this is, I know we push on the OEMs quite a bit. The quality of the data that we get from these APIs, the better we can provide, more data for these. So now I can take, have the recommended commands, no IP HTTP server, no IP HTTP secure server, and people can go and approve. So John, I could take this and now you can say approve remediation, which in this case is just going to go and not do anything at the moment, but I could add a follow-on steps that goes and creates a ticket.
Kick off another agent that's your remediation agent, right?
Correct. It could schedule remediation to happen at midnight tonight, just in case. But I think this is pretty.
Open up a service now ticket or however far you want to go, right? Partly why I love doing these demos with you and with others internally is that I get to see, even more of our platform in action, and I'm always impressed. I'm always wowed. So 4,300 tokens, and then the other one was 2,300 tokens or something. So less than 10,000 tokens. We're talking about nickels here, people. Like in terms of the scale, this probably cost 15 cents to run, right? And imagine that the human hours saved, what you're paying a high paid, high quality network engineer per hour. And we did this in about 7 minutes end to end, the demo, and in less than 10,000 tokens.
Yeah, about 6 and something, 7 minutes. That's right. And then also, John, you talked about this earlier, right? But you get the entire audit trail. A lot of people always want to know, hey, what is my LLM doing? I want to take, I want to, I'm nervous, right? Some people are still scared. I'm not scared anymore. We've been doing this for a while, right? So I'm not as concerned. My prompts, I try to keep my prompts very tight. But a lot of people want to know the details, right? What is the tool calling?
Well, imagine if this was just the tools called and none of the reasoning, right? Like, it doesn't give you much. You don't want this to be a black box and they go, well, what did it do? And you go, I have no idea what it did or why it did it, right? This is a really, really important step here, right? And we have the source. Who fired it? How was it fired, right? It's all there. It's all there. And now that these agents can be called from other workflows, other API calls, external tooling. If you wanted to have this CVE at your fingertip, you could call it externally, no problem. Remember, we talked about the Northbound access people. So people processes, and AI agents now externally have access to this agent internally through a variety of means, right? So from your Claude code, you could say through our MCP, could you please fire the CVE assessment with this new CVE I just got?
Yeah.
Without ever launching anything that you've just saw here today, you could do all this from Claude code too.
Absolutely. Yeah. As soon as I create an entry point on the automation there where we went and did the form, we create an API entry form that shows up automatically in MCP, and off you go to the races. So, for the people that have Copilot or have their own internal chain, like I talked to a customer the other day that they developed an internal chatbot with Streamlit UI, and it did some network stuff, but they were lacking some of the tooling in the backends, right? They'll do some basic things, but this is a way that you could do a bunch of tooling in the back end. The agent will do the heavy lifting and use the tooling that's available on the platform to kind of execute all these complicated actions. And like I said, John, before, we've done this, but it hasn't been quite as automated, if we will, right? Where now we're actually automating the codifying of that CVE, which is a big deal, right? Because if I have to codify that in a workflow every time, I'm going to end up with a bunch of workflows or a bunch of Python scripts.
Well, and what I really love the most about this, and we'll wrap things up here for everyone. We always talk about how agents and automation can help us with routine or mundane or low hanging or not so exciting, or like this isn't strategic work, right? Making sure that your fleet's patched. But it's important, and you don't want to be vulnerable. And depending on the environment you're in, this might be all you do all day long, right? So I love that we've thought of how to empower network engineers and empower organizations and getting rid of some of that tedium stuff, right? Did you check the CVEs this week, right? Or did you get the CVE alert last night, right? And it disrupts everything because you're in the middle of planning some deployment and now a new CVE just dropped. It's not something you can plan for, right, Joksan? Like when these hit, you could be in the middle of another project, right?
Well, we know now, John. So, you talked about hours, right? This used to be, again, as a new engineer, starting junior doing consulting, this used to be about 12 hours of my week doing this reporting alone. And I had tools. And then also talking about the planning pieces, right? We know there's a trend, right? Cisco has recently shrunk the reporting window, right? They're not doing twice a year PSERTs anymore. The reporting window has gone down, what is it, to 2 weeks, I think now?
Yeah.
And everybody's going to follow suit because, we have AI in one way, but then other people are using AI in other ways. So we're finding all these vulnerabilities, and nobody has time, right? Like you said, this is as I would say, as necessary and high impact as it goes, but as mundane as it comes, right? Nobody likes to do this. Nobody wants to do this by hand. So if we can remove that and have a machine do it, that to me is just, it's the best.
Well, and maybe the last angle is that these vulnerabilities are being exploited faster and faster too, right? Like your window between, sometimes you see these news, right? Like, okay, the exploit was announced at 4 a.m. and we actually have reports in the wild, or some of the more large vulnerability tools, Talos and things, start picking up infections just a few hours later, right? So this is critical stuff. And imagine if we could close the door on this. Imagine if vulnerabilities, you're always going to have them, but what if we could minimize the impact, minimize the risk, minimize the mean time to repair on these things, and make the world a more secure internet, right? And network overall, right? So Joksan, thank you for joining us. Do you have any kind of parting ideas or parting thoughts?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, the same as you, linkedin.com/Joksan Flores, all one word. I'm in there. I'm in X as Automate IP. I'm in GitHub, and in Itential.com, they can definitely get a hold of us or just message us on LinkedIn. We're also in the VibeOps forum channel, so I'm always actively there. So we're all there. And if people need to get a hold of us or asking us questions about this particular kind of use case, or maybe they saw some detail of, hey, I didn't know you could do that. Could you do it in this slightly different way? Because everybody always wants to do it slightly differently.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. The whole idea of this is entirely programmable. So yeah, hit us up. If you find me, contact me, contact the Itential through our Itential website, contact John directly or anybody here. And we can definitely do a private demo and have a private discussion.
And I know it's a little ways out, but we will be at the AutoCon coming up in the fall too. So, if you need to wait or if you're going to be at that event, we'll be there and we could give you this live, or if you had any real questions about it. So thanks for joining us again at this webinar. Reach out to us. All right. Thanks again.